Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went there? You stand there looking around like a detective at a crime scene. You check the table, you check the chair, you check the refrigerator. Then somehow you open the fridge, stare at the milk for 10 seconds and think, well, I don't know why I'm here, but since I'm here I might as well grab a snack. And suddenly the mission is gone forever. Now here's the funny part. When we're young, something like that happens and we panic. Oh no, what's happening to me? But when people get older, they just shrug, they laugh, they walk away. And 5 minutes later they've forgotten that they forgot. And honestly, that might be one of the greatest superpowers ever. Because according to the wisdom often associated with Carl Jung, getting older isn't just about wrinkles or grey hair. It's about changing your relationship with life. It's about realizing that some things simply aren't worth your energy anymore, including arguments, including drama, including trying to prove you're right every 5 minutes, and maybe, just maybe, including remembering every single thing. Because let's be honest, some memories deserve to stay lost. If you've ever spent 30 minutes looking for your glasses only to discover they're sitting on your head, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you've done that more than once, welcome. You've found your people. Now tell me in the comments, what's the funniest thing you've forgotten recently? And please don't say you forgot what you forgot, because I know somebody's already typing that. Today we're talking about something hilarious. Something surprisingly deep, and something that almost everybody experiences. Why do people reach a certain age and suddenly stop arguing about everything? Why do they seem calmer? Why do they laugh more? Why do they care less about being right? And why do they sometimes forget what they were saying halfway through a sentence? You know the moment. You start telling a story. You're fully committed. Everybody is listening. You're building suspense. Then suddenly, your brain clocks out, you freeze, you blink, and then you say, well, it was a good story. And everyone starts laughing. But maybe there is wisdom hiding inside moments like these. Maybe life is teaching us something. Maybe aging isn't about losing things. Maybe it's about letting go of things. And that's where today's adventure begins. Because the first thing people discover as they get older is this. Not every battle deserves a warrior. Think about it. When you're younger, you'll argue about anything. The best music, the best food, the best football team, the best phone, the best way to load a dishwasher. I didn't even know dishwashers had different strategies. Apparently, some people treat loading a dishwasher like military planning. They've got formations, defense systems, emergency protocols. You put one spoon in the wrong place and suddenly there's a lecture. But something funny happens with age. One day someone says, you know what? You're wrong. And instead of preparing for combat, you say, okay, that's it. No speech, no debate, no courtroom presentation, just, okay. And the other person is standing there confused because they came prepared. They had evidence, they had charts, they had screenshots. They were ready for a championship-level argument, and you just smiled, because you've discovered something powerful. Peace feels better than winning. Now don't get me wrong, older people still have opinions. Lots of opinions. In fact, some of the strongest opinions on earth belong to grandparents. But they don't always feel the need to fight about them, because experience teaches a simple lesson. Being right is overrated. Being peaceful is underrated. Think about how much energy people spend trying to win arguments online. Some people are fighting complete strangers at 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning. Nobody wins. Nobody changes their mind. Everybody loses sleep. The only winner is the coffee company the next morning. But eventually life teaches us something funny. Most arguments disappear. The issue that felt enormous 5 years ago, gone. The disagreement that ruined your whole week, gone. The person you were trying so hard to impress, gone. And suddenly you realize, Why was I carrying all that stress? It's like carrying 10 heavy bags through an airport. Eventually, you start dropping some. Not because you're weak, because you're smart. And that's one of the hidden gifts of aging. You become selective. You stop spending your energy everywhere. You stop chasing every disagreement. You stop entering every battle, because you finally understand something that younger people often learn the hard way. Not every invitation deserves an RSVP. Someone wants drama? Enjoy. Someone wants an argument? Good luck. Someone wants chaos? Have fun. I'll be over here enjoying my coffee, and honestly, that sounds like a pretty good life. But here's where it gets even funnier, because while people stop arguing more, they also start forgetting what they were arguing about in the first place, which might actually be nature's greatest peacekeeping strategy. Imagine trying to stay angry while forgetting the reason you're angry. It's almost impossible. You start the day furious. Then suddenly, now why was I upset again? 5 minutes later you're eating cookies. Crisis solved, and maybe that's why some older people seem happier. Not because life got easier, but because they stopped carrying every little thing. They learned to laugh. They learned to let go. They learned that sometimes forgetting is not a failure. Sometimes it's freedom. And trust me, we're only getting started. Because the next thing aging teaches people might be even funnier. It involves conversations, it involves names, and it involves that incredibly awkward moment when you've known someone for 10 years. But suddenly, their name disappears from your brain like a witness entering a protection program. Now let's talk about names, because this is where things get dangerous. You see someone you've known for years. Years. You've attended birthdays together. You've had conversations. You've shared meals. You know their life story. You know their dog's name. You know where they went on vacation in 2018. But suddenly, their actual name, gone, completely gone, vanished. Your brain has left the chat, and now you're standing there smiling way too hard. You know that smile, the panic smile, the smile that says, I absolutely know who you are, but please don't ask me your name because we're both about to have a bad day. So you start using survival techniques. Hey, my friend, great to see you. How have you been? Notice how the name never appears. You become a professional escape artist, and somehow it works. Until somebody walks over and says, Oh, you remember Michael, right? And inside your head you're like, Thank you, Michael. I never doubted you for a second. But here's the funny thing. As people get older, many stop getting embarrassed by these moments. They laugh, they admit it, they make jokes about it, and that's actually a beautiful thing. Because younger people often think they have to appear perfect. Older people know better. They know everybody is human. Everybody forgets things. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has moments. The difference is they stop treating every mistake like a national emergency, and that's incredibly freeing. Imagine how much happier life becomes when every little mistake doesn't ruin your day. You spill coffee? Okay. You forget a name? Okay. You send a text to the wrong person? Slightly terrifying. But okay. Life moves on. And that's another lesson age quietly teaches. Perfection is exhausting. Have you noticed that? Trying to be perfect is like trying to hold water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the faster it escapes. At some point, people realize, maybe I don't need to be perfect. Maybe I can just be human. And suddenly, life gets lighter. Now here's another funny thing that happens. People start telling the same stories, again, and again, and again, and again. Now before you laugh, you probably do this too. You just haven't reached professional level yet. Older people can tell the same story with such confidence that it deserves its own television series. You'll hear it at family dinners, holiday gatherings, Birthday parties. Everybody already knows what's coming. The opening line starts, and immediately the entire family exchanges looks. Oh no, not this story. It's happening again. But here's the secret. The story isn't really about the story. The story is about connection. The story is about reliving a happy memory. The story is about sharing a piece of yourself. That's why people tell stories. And honestly, one day we'll all be doing it too. You'll be sitting somewhere saying, "Did I ever tell you about the time?" And your kids will say, "Yes." And you'll continue anyway. Because that's your right. You've earned it. But here's where things get really funny. Sometimes the storyteller forgets where the story was going. Halfway through, the story starts strong. There's excitement. There's suspense. Everybody's listening. Then suddenly, the storyteller stops, looks around, and says, "Well," long pause, "I had a point." And honestly, sometimes that's the funniest part. The entire room starts laughing. Even the storyteller starts laughing. And that's something I love. The ability to laugh at yourself. Because that's another gift many people discover later in life. They stop taking themselves so seriously. Think about how much stress comes from constantly worrying about how we look, how we sound, what people think, whether we made a mistake, whether we said the perfect thing. It's exhausting, but older people often develop a secret weapon. They stop caring about every tiny judgment. Not completely. They're still human, but they stop letting every opinion control their happiness, and that's powerful. Imagine being free from needing everybody's approval. Imagine posting something online without checking every comment 10 times. Imagine wearing what you like, saying what you mean, laughing when you make a mistake. That sounds peaceful. Carl Jung often explored the idea that as we mature, we become more connected to our true selves. And maybe that's what we're seeing. Less performance, more authenticity, less pretending, more living. And honestly, that's a trade I'll take any day. Now let's talk about one of the funniest things that happens with age. Walking into a room and forgetting why. Because this deserves its own award category. You have a mission. A clear mission. You stand up. You know exactly where you're going. You walk confidently down the hallway. You enter the room. Then nothing. Absolutely nothing. The mission has disappeared. The file has been deleted. The meeting has been cancelled. You stand there looking around like an explorer who just discovered a new continent. Why am I here? You check one thing, then another. Then somehow 20 minutes later you're cleaning a drawer you weren't even thinking about before. The original task, gone forever. But honestly, life has a funny way of working. Sometimes the thing you forgot wasn't important. Sometimes the thing you found along the way was a conversation, a laugh, a memory, a moment. Maybe that's why older people often seem less rushed. They've learned that not everything needs to happen immediately. Not every second needs to be optimized. Not every moment needs to be productive. Sometimes you can just enjoy being alive, and that's a lesson many people spend decades trying to learn. Tell me honestly, when was the last time you sat down and did absolutely nothing? No phone, no scrolling, no multitasking, just existing. For many people that's harder than solving a puzzle. But older generations often remind us of something important. Life isn't only about getting somewhere, it's also about noticing where you already are. And that brings us to another funny truth. The older people get, the more random their conversations become. 1 minute they're talking about lunch. The next minute they're discussing a neighbor they haven't seen since 1987. Then somehow they're talking about tomatoes, then weather, then a bird they saw 3 weeks ago. The conversation travels faster than a world tour, and somehow it all makes sense. Kind of. Maybe. Sometimes. But that's part of the charm. Because life becomes less about staying perfectly on track, and more about enjoying the journey. even if the journey occasionally takes a strange detour through forgotten names, missing glasses, and stories that started somewhere completely different. And trust me, the next lesson aging teaches might be the funniest one of all, because it involves opinions. And something happens to opinions when people get older that surprises almost everyone. Let's talk about opinions, because this one is hilarious. When we're younger, we think our opinions are priceless. We defend them like treasure. Someone disagrees with us, and suddenly we're preparing a full presentation. We've got evidence, we've got statistics, we've got screenshots, we've got witnesses, we've got a 30-minute speech nobody asked for. And if somebody still disagrees, well, now it's personal. But then something funny happens as life goes on. People start realizing that everybody has opinions. Everybody. The guy at the grocery store. The neighbor across the street. The person on social media who somehow became an expert overnight. Everybody has opinions. And suddenly your own opinion doesn't feel like something you need to protect every second of the day. You become more relaxed. Somebody says, "I think pineapple belongs on pizza." You smile. Somebody says, "I don't think pineapple belongs on pizza." You smile again. You know why? Because you've reached a level of wisdom where your happiness is no longer controlled by fruit toppings. That's growth. And honestly, some of the happiest people I know have mastered this skill. They know when to speak. They know when to stay quiet. And most importantly, they know when something simply isn't worth their blood pressure. Because here's a secret nobody tells you. Peace is addictive. Once you experience enough peace, you start protecting it. You stop volunteering for unnecessary drama. You stop collecting stress. You stop carrying problems that don't belong to you. You become very selective about what gets access to your energy. And that's one of the funniest transformations of all. The same person who used to argue for an hour can now end a debate in 3 seconds. Okay, that's it. One word. Conversation over. The other person is still warming up. They're still stretching. They're still preparing their arguments. Meanwhile, you've already moved on to thinking about lunch. Now here's another thing people discover later in life. The little things become funny. Really funny. Things that would have annoyed them years ago suddenly become comedy material. You forget your keys. You laugh. You wear your reading glasses while looking for your reading glasses. You laugh. You walk into a room and forget why you're there. You laugh. You tell somebody a story and halfway through realize you've already told them 3 times. You laugh. Because eventually you understand something powerful. Life is much more enjoyable when you laugh with it instead of fighting it. Think about that. How many moments become easier the second we stop resisting them? A lot. And maybe that's why some older people seem lighter. Not because life has been easy. Many have faced challenges younger people can't even imagine. Loss, disappointment, heartbreak, unexpected turns, difficult seasons. But somewhere along the way they learned something. Life is too short to spend all your time being upset. So they laugh. And that laughter carries wisdom. Now, let's talk about one final funny habit. The ability to completely change subjects without warning. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're having a conversation. Everything is normal. Then suddenly, "Oh, that reminds me." And off they go, into a completely different story. A different decade. A different country. Possibly a different universe. Nobody knows how they got there. Not even them. But somehow it's entertaining. And maybe that's because life itself is like that. Life rarely follows a straight line. We plan one thing. Something else happens. We expect one outcome. Life surprises us. We start one chapter. We end up in another. And the older people get, the more comfortable they become with that reality. They stop demanding perfection from life. They stop demanding certainty. They become flexible. And flexibility is a superpower. A tree that refuses to bend breaks. A tree that bends survives the storm. Maybe people become wiser because they learn how to bend, how to adapt, how to laugh, how to let life be life. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding behind all those funny moments. The forgotten names, the repeated stories, the missing glasses, the lost train of thought, the unfinished sentences, the random conversations, the harmless mistakes. Maybe those things are reminders. Reminders that life was never meant to be a perfect performance. It was meant to be lived, enjoyed, shared, laughed through. Because one day, all of us will reach an age where we stop chasing every argument, we stop trying to win every battle, we stop worrying about every opinion, and maybe we'll forget what we were saying halfway through a sentence. But maybe that's okay. Actually, maybe that's wonderful. Because at the end of the day, nobody remembers the arguments they won. Nobody throws a party because they were right in a comment section 6 years ago. Nobody frames a certificate that says, "Congratulations, you won a pointless debate." But people remember laughter. People remember joy. People remember kindness. People remember how you made them feel. That's what stays. That's what matters. So if you've reached an age where you're forgetting a few things, welcome to the club. If you've ever walked into a room and forgotten why, welcome to the club. If you've ever searched for your phone while holding your phone, you are definitely in the club. And if you've ever started telling a story and completely forgotten where it was going, well, I think we were talking about something important. What was it again? See, now we're all doing it. And maybe that's the perfect place to end. Not with a serious lesson, not with a complicated philosophy, just with a smile. Because life is already difficult enough, if we can laugh a little more, stress a little less, and stop arguing over things that won't matter next week, we're probably doing better than we think. So tell me in the comments, what's the funniest thing you've ever forgotten? I have a feeling the stories are going to be better than this video. And if you enjoyed spending this time together, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us again. Assuming, of course, we all remember where the subscribe button is. Until next time, take care of yourself, laugh often, and if you forget what you were worrying about today, that might be the best thing that happens all week.